y'all, and welcome to Anime and Beyond. This is actually an impromptu video, and I decided that I wanted to do it after reading some comments that really annoyed me. So as you can tell by the title, this video is about signs that Eren always liked Mikasa, and I'm just gonna get right into it. So starting with when Mikasa and Eren first met. I mean, they were kids, so it's not like a really strong evidence to show that he liked her, but like first of all, in hindsight, knowing that the grown Eren, this is spoilers for people that have not read the manga. This is spoiler alert. I'm gonna give you a second. I'll probably give you a timestamp to go over. But knowing in the future that the chapters reveal that Eren was actually instructing his younger self to go and save Mikasa, it makes so much sense in hindsight that like Eren always liked Mikasa, because when you think about the first time they met, Eren didn't even meet her yet, and he was so adamant about saving her to the extent that he murdered grown men. That is not normal. And initially I thought it was just a character attribute of his, and it can still very much be one, but I don't think it's a surprise that Eren literally went to such lengths to protect her. And I don't think that type of vehemence has ever reared its head ever again throughout the rest of the story. And then after he gets to formally meet her there and then, and she's just like asking his dad where she should go, he like wraps his scarf around her and kind of blushes, takes her hand, and leads her to their home. So he was always like always had a soft spot for her as a child. So then moving on from that, we can go to the first chapter of Attack on Titan. We see that Eren wakes up from a memory of an older Mikasa saying goodbye to him, and it leaves him in tears when he wakes up. And then, I don't know if you guys caught this, but when he woke up, he was really like kind of sad about her hair being longer. And it begs the question, why is he so invested in her looks? And this only continues in the first season when he insists that she keeps her hair short under the guise that it will get in her way while she's training, which doesn't make sense because Historia has around the same length of hair, so does Ymir, and so do other people in the like Sasha, and it doesn't get in their way. So it really is just a preference for him because he thinks that she looks better that way. So that was another sign that like he was interested in her more than platonically. So let's start with first season. Now let's be clear, when I first watched Attack on Titan, I did not think Eren liked Mikasa at all. And it wasn't until I rewatched it a second time, and this was I think before I even read the chapters, that it occurred to me that Eren liked Mikasa. And I'll start with what made me realize that in season 1. So like I said, when I binged the series the first time, I thought Eren saw Mikasa as an overbearing authoritarian figure who he thought was incredibly annoying. And by the time I watched it again, I was able to catch on to some key nuances in their relationship dynamic that made it obvious to me that he did not see her in a familial manner. So I was able to see that Eren's annoyance at Mikasa was not at her actual behavior, but instead at what he believes is the intent or the motivation behind her behavior. He thinks Mikasa protects them out of a duty to his mother, because if you guys remember in the first episode, right before Eren's mother died, she asked Mikasa to take care of him, and then Mikasa takes that very seriously. So I think that going forward in season 1, I think he thinks Mikasa only protects him and is protective and cares about him to the extent that she does because of the fact that she made that promise with his mother and out of an obligation, a familial obligation to him. And I think it's also really interesting that Eren continues to drive home the point that he is not her brother. Instead of getting angry at her actual actions and being like, this is annoying, stop doing this action, he's just like, I'm not your brother. And he keeps like driving home the point that like, stop seeing me in a familial manner, which when I first watched it was confusing to me because I was like, why would he get upset at the prospect of Mikasa looking at him as a family member? What is so offensive about that? And even if she didn't see him as a family member, what is so offensive about her caring about him even in a friendly manner, you know, like as a friend? And I question whether or not he would have as visceral a reaction to that kind of behavior or gesture if Armin were doing the same thing. And I don't think he would have that type of reaction because there have been times Armin has been protective of Eren and he doesn't rebuke it in any way. But when Mikasa is protective over him or concerned about him, he gets incredibly frustrated, which is another indication that he does not see her as family. He doesn't want her to see him as family. And in hindsight, I'm like, oh, well, it's because he doesn't see her that way, you know? He doesn't look at her in that way, and he doesn't want her to look at him in that way. And let me see. Yeah, so that was first season. Second season, now, actually, before I get to second season, I want to highlight the fact that there's a huge change in how Eren receives Mikasa's gestures and concern in season 1 versus season 3. Like a huge 180 actually. And it begs the question, what happened in season 2 that triggered that shift? So in season 2, it didn't reveal that much to me in terms of Eren and Mikasa's relationship dynamic, but it did mark the beginning of a very noticeable change in a noticeable change, not a huge one, in their relationship dynamic. And it's, in retrospect, it's pretty clear why. So this was a season that Eren starts to understand that Mikasa's motivations in protecting him are not strictly platonic. Eren begins to appreciate Mikasa's help for the first time. I think this is when he was fighting Reiner after the big reveal, and Mikasa helps him by cutting Reiner's the hinds of his legs to just handicap him, and it seems like Eren is very appreciative of that. And then Mikasa, now the big moment in season 2 that I think marked the transition and why Eren was so different in season 3 versus season 1 and how he treated her was the fact that when Mikasa thought they were about to die, she practically confesses her feelings to him, right? And that is the key moment that Eren is able to understand, like, oh, the motivation behind why Mikasa is so protective of me is not strictly platonic. It's not because she sees me as a family member, it's because she loves me. So we see that she confesses her feelings towards him when she thinks they're about to die, and he rejects her kiss. So the first time I watched this, I thought it was kind of awkward, because I was just like, they're about to die, or they're in the middle of a very pivotal moment, you know, like he is grieving over the loss of Hannes, you know. I think Mikasa was pretty sad too, but at the time I was like, this is really ill-timed, but it did serve a purpose, because actually, let me get into that afterwards. Like, when he rejected her kiss, I thought that was another clear indication to me that he wasn't interested in her in that way. But I saw a comment from someone that made me think about it differently, and they were like, he didn't reject her affection, he rejected the cause of it. Like, she was only doing this because she thought that they were about to die, so she was like, I might as well confess my feelings to this guy. So he was rejecting the fact that they were gonna die. So he rejected the kiss because he rejected the idea that they're gonna die and that they're not gonna be able to see each other again. So after he rejects her kiss, he gets motivated to fight this Titan again after being completely demotivated, discouraged, self-loathing. Mikasa's words is able to motivate him to see some value in his life again and try to fight again, and which in itself says a lot, because all Mikasa did was thank Eren for helping her, and he's like, okay, I think I can fight again. And he promises to continue to wrap her scarf around her as long as she likes, after she says all that stuff. And I guess the bonus is that in the chapters after this happens and they arrive back home, Mikasa is carried on a stretcher because she did break her ribs, and Eren seems very guilty about it and very concerned, and she's like, listen, this is not your fault, I'm the one who decided to do all this. So it was a huge turning point in when Eren starts to show a more overt concern for Mikasa's well-being, and even the way he receives her gestures and her protectiveness is very, very different. So now this brings us to season 3, where Eren does a complete 180 when it comes to Mikasa's concern for his safety. He notices that she always carries that scarf and offers to get her a new one. You guys correct me on whether or not this happened in season 2 or season 3. I'm pretty sure it happened in season 3, but it could have been in season 2. It might have been in season 2. Yeah, I think it was in season 2. So actually just mentally take that very note and then drop it in the season 2 area where Eren wakes up from Mikasa. He wakes up from being injured, or I guess, and he sees Mikasa sitting there with this scarf and she's sewing it, and he offers to get her a new one. So that also contributes to the fact that in season 2, Eren starts to notice that Mikasa's motivations for protecting him come from a different place than he anticipated. So then going back to season 3, completely ignore that point, mentally drop it in season 2 section. And it goes back to how Eren receives Mikasa's concern. So instead of expressing general annoyance and frustration at her gestures, he actually accepts them and complies with her suggestions. So whenever she expresses concern for his well-being, or she does something puts her jacket on him, for example, when he loses his, he thanks her. When she tells him, oh, Eren, focus on eating, he actually goes back to eating. There's just certain things, when she takes his horse and leads it away from him, he actually thanks her for leading his horse. There's just different things. He starts to have a general concern for her too, not just physically but mentally, because I remember when he was was recalling the way his father died, or not recalling the way his father died, but he was recalling something about his father's death, and then he was extra cautious about talking about it in front of Mikasa because he was just concerned, because she also liked his father. His father also played a role in her finding a new home after the murder of her parents, so he was just like a lot more cautious about talking about it in front of her because he thinks that like it's gonna traumatize her. So he starts to express concern for like her mental health, and he starts to generally thank her for helping him, apologizes for inconveniencing her, shows concern for her physical and emotional well-being, and so on and so forth. There's also a scene where he talks about like when they arrive at the first wall, I forget what it's called. I don't think it's Shiganshina, but basically when they arrive at the very same wall they used to live within, he starts to think about like reclaiming his home. And when he thinks about it, he turns to Mikasa, and it's like it's insinuated that she's included. Like he wants to reclaim his home, not only for himself but for Mikasa. And I thought that was interesting. And he seeks and appreciates Mikasa's emotional support too. So this happens when they're trying to argue in favor of Armin getting the needle, and Eren seeks Mikasa's support and backing him up and taking the remedy from Levi. And I think that was also a pivotal moment because he like depends on her in a way that I've never seen him like actually be like, Mikasa, back me up here. And he also accepts her emotional support when he actually opens up the book that reveals the truth of his father's past. At first he's hesitant to open it. I guess it's like anticipation, but then Mikasa puts her hand over his and helps him open it. And I think that was also like, he accepts that and appreciates that. And I think that was also like a pivotal moment. And another thing is that like when Eren learns about his father, he actively wants to share what he uncovers about his father's past with Mikasa, because they do share that connection and that they were in the same household for a year. And then there's the fact that like once Mikasa learns about Armin and Eren being on a timetable, like 12-year timetable before they leave as a result of adopting the Titan powers, she gets depressed and loses weight, and he notices it and he expresses like some vague concern. That's not like a big one I want to mention, but it was a moment where I was like, oh, Eren actually shows concern for her. Interesting. So then that brings us to the chapters. So if you are not ahead in the chapters, and I think a lot of this is covered, some of this is covered in the 4th season, but I could understand if these are still spoilers, I'll still put a spoiler alert. So in the chapters, there's a flashback where Eren is discussing with, the scouts who's gonna adopt his Titan after he dies. And he essentially cuts everyone off and is like, I don't want any of you guys to adopt this Titan because I care about all of you guys. And everybody's kind of embarrassed and stuff like that. And like Eren and Mikasa share this little moment where they're blushing at each other. And also something about like the books, the author kind of already insinuates to the audience that they share special feelings for each other. That's why it's kind of like, I don't know why it's that much of a shock to some people that they like each other, because there's actually a cover of a book where they're all sitting underneath a tree and then they're just looking at each other. Like Eren and Mikasa are just straight up looking at each other. Armin is just like in the middle, kind of enjoying this book, but it's like so obvious. The author's like, what else do you want me to do at this point? And also in the chapters, we see that Eren asks Mikasa what she thinks about him. And this kind of motivated me. This is the start of what motivated me to do this video, because I noticed that in the Attack on Titan fandom, there's a sect. There's a toxic ass sect. Like there's different sects within the Attack on Titan fandom that are just like, okay, pro genocide or or like these like shippers. And I'm not a shipper, but like I just wanted to do this video because I realized some of these shippers are so toxic. Like the people who ship Eren and Historia, those are the most toxic people ever, because those are the people who will literally refer to Mikasa as a slave. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Mikasa has made such important contributions to this show. Like, don't disrespect Mikasa, please. And I also noticed that there was a chapter where Mikasa thinks back on this time where Eren asks her what she thinks about him. And I guess she's kind of bashful. She doesn't want to really reveal her true feelings to him. So she says that he's family. And she thinks back and she thinks like, what if I chose a different response? Would any of this have happened? Could I have prevented anything from responding differently? And the fandom was just like, Mikasa is so delusional. But I'm like, Mikasa is created by Isayama. I don't think he made her think all these things and say all these things to reveal that she's arrogant in nature or something, or like self-absorbed. I think he actually made her say those things and wrote her in that way to reveal to the audience a little bit more insight about Eren, because Mikasa does know Eren really well, and the audience thinks they know Eren more than Mikasa. That's what I realized. Every single time Mikasa thinks about Eren, has a memory of him, question things about him, the audience is like, you don't know Eren, we know Eren. It's like, no, y'all don't. She knows Eren. So when she first thinks back on this scene, a lot of people start to think she's delusional, but then it's even more obvious that Eren doesn't see Mikasa in a familial way, and he's actually looking for a very specific response from her in terms of like, do you have any romantic feelings for me? Because what kind of guy, I mean, just really think about it. Would you ask somebody that you're not romantically interested in whether or not they're interested in you? Would you ask them what the nature of their interest is in you? Would you care? I wouldn't care. I wouldn't, because that's setting me up to have to hurt their feelings. Why would I do that? Eren's asking her what she feels about him for a very specific reason, and I'm sure it's gonna be all revealed in the last chapter. If it isn't, then I'm just gonna assume, like most of the fan base, and it's because he likes her. It's because he likes her, y'all. Like, Eren has not asked anyone else in the show, what do you think about me? Like, he literally only asked Mikasa. And then when Mikasa gives him a response he doesn't want to hear, he goes to Zeke and asks him, what do you think, Zeke, that Mikasa thinks about him? And Zeke's like thinking over everything, and he's like, man, I think she likes you. I think there's nobody who does these type of things for someone that they see in a familial manner or anything like that. And like, Eren's like really mulling it over in his mind. So again, it begs the question, why is Eren so insistent about how Mikasa views him? It doesn't make any sense for someone who's not romantically interested. Why does it make a difference? Why does it make a difference? He drove it home twice. He asked twice. He inquired twice. What difference does it make in his plans? And that's why Mikasa questions, would the response I gave him at the time change the decisions he made? Because clearly he cared. And again, it begs the question, why would it matter? It matters. And then you think about, even in that same chapter, Eren thinks back on all his memories, and he remembers all these different like people or experiences, and they're all broken into shards. And the one shard that takes up the most space, the biggest shard of all his memories, is Mikasa. So again, it's another insinuation the author makes that this guy has special feelings for Mikasa. And I think people were literally hoping that like Eren was gonna be a romantic. This series is not a romantic series. Like, their romance, their love is not the basis of this whole series, but he does include like very real life elements. People do tend to like other people in real life, so he includes it because it's a part of the reality of humanity. And Eren does like Mikasa. And of course, the last big factor, the last big thing that that shows that Eren has always liked Mikasa is that he shows her another timeline where she does admit her feelings for him, and what future that leads them to. And he deliberately shows her like that they spent the remainder of their day, the remainder of his days, not hers, the remainder of his days together in a cabin, just doing their thing. And they decide to run away with each other. And another thing is like, Eren in that timeline, she confesses her feelings. She's like, let's run away. But Eren in that photo is leading the charge. He's the one taking her by the hand and running away with her. So it's like he was looking for an out. She gave him one and they ran away. So it's not like people literally kept thinking that this is all in Mikasa's mind. That's another thing that annoyed me and made me want to do this video, is this idea that this author is shoving down all these points and people still think it's Mikasa's delusions. That is so annoying. That is so annoying. There's so many signs that Eren liked Mikasa throughout the series, and y'all are deliberately like rejecting it because it's not the ending you want. It's not the person you wanted him to be with. Like, you guys thought it was more feasible for Eren to end up with Historia. Meanwhile, there's a whole memory of Historia, like, basically standing. She's shipping Eren and Mikasa too. She's shipping them the same way Armin was shipping them in the beginning. Like, she's like, oh, Mikasa, it's so good that you have somebody that you can go to and share your pain with. Who does that to somebody there? Who does that? What girl? It's like, I'm so glad that my man, or the guy I'm interested, is who you can turn to with your emotional baggage. What girl does that? That doesn't make any sense. Y'all thought that was feasible, and it didn't make sense. There was never any moment between Historia and Eren that would insinuate that they had romantic feelings towards each other. The only moment they had is when Eren was like, oh, I'm glad you're not fake anymore. That's it. He was like, oh, I'm glad you ain't like two-faced no more. Like, I'm glad that you're like true to yourself. Good job, girl. And y'all thought that was the beginning of a love story. And I'm sorry to tell you, but it wasn't. I'm sorry to tell you that it wasn't. And like, why would Historia go and shack up with Eren after basically cheering him on with Mikasa? Who does that? So it's just annoying me how the fandom, it's like Mikasa always understood Eren, right? It's clear by the end of this, like end of chapter 138, that Mikasa always knew Eren, not us, the fandom, Mikasa, because everything she thought was true. She was right in the idea that if she responded differently, it would have led to a different path, because he showed her the timeline in which she responded differently and he responded to it. Like, she knows Eren better than the actual audience, and that annoys the audience. Like, the audience doesn't like Eren. I won't say they don't like Eren, but they don't like that Eren isn't who they thought that he was. Or they're still trying to shove this idea that Eren is the guy they think he is, and they just won't accept the fact that he's not, okay? So they would rather like miss the very clear signs the author has given us between the dynamic between Eren and Mikasa, and instead literally like insist that she's delusional and that everything is in her head. How the heck would Mikasa, she literally had a headache. Why would she have a headache and then automatically think, oh, like, this is the other time? Like, who does that? That doesn't make any sense. She's about to kill this man and then she thinks about, no, it's not delusion. He literally showed her that timeline, which is why before she kills him, they have a look of acknowledgement that, okay, at least in another timeline we were happy together. Like, that's it. That is it. Anyway, that's my video. I'm sure there's gonna be more to add in the last chapter. I hope the last chapter of the series, it really reveals Eren's perspective, because I don't feel like they've revealed enough about Eren's perspective to make me understand why he did everything he did. I mean, I understand, but then again, I'm like, I don't understand. I just want his perspective, like not his partial perspective, his full ass perspective. Like from the time of the first chapter to the very end, I want to know what the heck Eren was feeling, because that's what's missing throughout the story, okay? Anyway, let me know what you think, or not. I just don't want any like Historia Eren shippers coming in with their delusions, because it is delusional, okay? Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope you tune in again in the future. Until next time, bye.